Are you sure this is him? Victoria Lang whispered under her breath, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor of the private dining room. Lucas Bennett stood by the table, a plain black jacket over a crisp white shirt, holding a folded napkin with the same careful precision he used to tie his daughter's shoelaces every morning. He didn't look up, didn't offer a smile, just nodded once when she passed by, and the silence between them thickened like the quiet before a storm. The chandelier overhead cast a warm glow, making the crystal sparkle, yet it did nothing to lighten the tension Victoria felt as she scanned the room crowded with the hum of silverware and murmured greetings. Waiters floated between tables carrying trays of delicate hors d'oeuvres, but their movements seemed to fade into the background, as though the room itself held its breath. Lucas shifted his weight slightly, setting the napkin down on the corner of the table with care, each motion deliberate, quiet, dignified. He did not glance at the guests, nor did he acknowledge the subtle sideways looks from those who thought they understood the story. Victoria's hand tightened on the menu she hadn't opened yet, her gray eyes narrowing, a flicker of curiosity mingling with disbelief. He was just a single dad, she reminded herself, a stranger at the wrong table at the wrong time. Yet there was something in the way he carried himself, something that didn't belong to the world of misunderstandings and hurried judgments. She took a slow step closer, the soft click of her heels echoing faintly, and Lucas finally looked up, his gaze meeting hers for a single heartbeat, unflinching, silent, and it made her chest tighten unexpectedly. The air between them seemed to thrum with unspoken questions, and for the first time, Victoria felt a pang of uncertainty that had nothing to do with her carefully controlled schedule or meticulously planned evening. Lucas adjusted his jacket ever so slightly, the subtle motion catching the light, revealing a line of quiet confidence that was not loud, not brash, but steady, enduring, like someone who had weathered far more than anyone in the room could imagine. Guests nearby whispered, a hush settling over the room as eyes darted between the two, sensing the unfolding drama that was neither aggressive nor theatrical but charged with meaning. Victoria swallowed and realized she had underestimated the weight a single look could carry. Lucas moved slowly toward the center of the room, a step measured, deliberate, not hurried, and yet it seemed to command the space around him, drawing a line between ordinary life and something quietly remarkable. The chandelier caught a glint off his cuff, the tiniest reflection of light, but it was enough to signal to Victoria that this man, misunderstood, overlooked, yet unwavering, held a presence that could not be ignored. She straightened her back, exhaling softly, unsure whether to step forward or retreat, but something deep inside told her that walking away was not an option, that the narrative was shifting imperceptibly, and the story of this evening had only just begun. Victoria had negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions, faced hostile boardrooms, and delivered keynote speeches before thousands of people without a tremor in her voice. Yet standing across from Lucas Bennett felt strangely different. The waiter approached with a polite smile. "Good evening. Shall I bring menus for both of you?" Victoria opened her mouth to correct him, but Lucas answered first. "I think there has been a misunderstanding." His voice was calm, low, and respectful. No embarrassment, no irritation, just quiet honesty. The waiter blinked. "I am sorry, sir. The reservation was for two." Lucas offered a small nod. Then someone made an easy mistake. The waiter apologized again and stepped away. Victoria expected Lucas to leave. Most people would have. Most people would have seized the moment to explain themselves, defend their pride, or make the situation uncomfortable. Instead, he simply reached for the chair and prepared to walk away. Something about that unsettled her. "Wait," she said. Lucas paused. Around them, the soft music of a piano drifted through the restaurant. Candlelight reflected against polished glass. Outside, rain tapped gently against the tall windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Victoria folded her arms. "You are taking this surprisingly well." Lucas smiled faintly. "Life gives you bigger problems than a mistaken dinner reservation." The answer landed with unexpected weight. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Victoria noticed something resting beside his chair. A small gift bag decorated with colorful stars and handwritten stickers. It looked completely out of place among the luxury surroundings. "What is that?" she asked. Lucas glanced toward it, and for the first time something softened in his expression. "A birthday present," For your daughter? Yes. Victoria looked away quickly, surprised she had guessed correctly. Lucas picked up the bag carefully, as though it contained something priceless. Perhaps it did. How old is she? 8. His voice carried warmth now. She wanted a telescope. Victoria raised an eyebrow. A telescope? Lucas nodded. She likes looking at the stars. She says they remind her that the world is bigger than bad days. The words lingered between them. Victoria found herself staring at him. Most people she met spoke about success, status, and ambition. Few spoke about wonder. Fewer still spoke about it with complete sincerity. A sudden burst of laughter echoed from a nearby table where several executives were entertaining clients. One of them glanced toward Lucas and then toward Victoria, clearly assuming they were together. The man offered a knowing smile. Victoria felt an unusual urge to correct him, yet she remained silent. Lucas noticed the look and gave a small shrug. People see what they expect to see. And what do they expect to see? Victoria asked. A story they already understand. His answer came without bitterness, just quiet acceptance. The piano melody shifted into something slower. Outside, the rain grew steadier. Victoria looked at the empty chair across from her. Lucas looked toward the restaurant entrance, as if considering whether to leave. Neither moved. Neither seemed eager to end the conversation. And for reasons Victoria could not explain, the evening she had planned no longer felt nearly as interesting as the unexpected one unfolding in front of her. Victoria shifted in her seat, the polished surface of the table reflecting the soft glow of the chandelier above. Lucas, still standing by the window, watched the rain cascade in gentle sheets down the glass. The room smelled faintly of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries, a calm contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling through Victoria's mind. She noticed how deliberately Lucas held himself, the subtle alignment of his shoulders, the easy steadiness in his posture, and it was impossible not to feel the quiet strength radiating from him. A server approached with a carafe of water, and Lucas accepted it with a polite nod, never taking his eyes off the window, as though the moment of reflection outside carried more weight than anything happening inside. Victoria's fingers tapped lightly against the edge of the menu, a rhythmic sound barely audible but enough to mark the passage of minutes. She observed him carefully, noticing how he responded to small disturbances with patience. Another guest's child bumping into a chair, the soft scrape of a waiter's shoe against the tile, and how he managed each interaction with dignity and consideration without saying a word. Her curiosity deepened. She leaned slightly forward, her voice gentle yet cautious. "Do you come here often?" Lucas finally looked toward her, his expression calm, composed, neither inviting nor dismissive, just observant. "Not really," he said quietly. "I prefer quiet places where my daughter can be herself." His words carried a weight she had not expected, grounding the entire space with an authenticity that was almost tangible. Victoria's gaze softened, and she felt a rare inclination to understand the life behind the man before her. She noted the small imperfections in his attire, the faint grease smudge on his cuff from a day of honest work, and the way he maintained his composure in a room that had been prepared for elegance and superficiality. Lucas moved again, this time to retrieve a folded napkin he had placed on the sideboard, and he returned to his previous stance, holding it like a small token of intent, simple and unassuming. The soft piano melody shifted, and Victoria realized she had been unconsciously holding her breath, waiting to see how he would navigate each interaction without a trace of arrogance or need for recognition. Her heart beat a little faster, but she maintained her poise, captivated by the understated authority and quiet morality that seemed to follow him. A brief murmur came from another table, laughter subdued by the attentive murmur of the restaurant. Yet Lucas did not flinch. He acknowledged nothing, yet in his calm disregard, he conveyed more than words ever could about his values, his patience, his unwavering attention to others. Victoria found herself leaning closer, drawn not by attraction alone, but by admiration for the integrity and grace evident in every gesture. The rain continued its steady descent outside, each drop a soft percussion that seemed to mirror the gentle rhythm of their developing awareness of one another. It was as if time had slowed, allowing a space where quiet reflection and silent respect could exist, building an invisible bridge of understanding between them. Neither rushed, neither forced a conversation, yet the subtle, deliberate acts, the patience, and the dignity Lucas displayed spoke volumes, reshaping Victoria's assumptions and opening a door to the possibility that some of the most remarkable people reveal themselves not through words or titles, but through quiet, consistent, graceful presence. The evening continued to settle into an unexpected rhythm. The rain outside had softened into a steady mist that blurred the city lights into streaks of gold and silver across the glass. Victoria glanced toward the entrance when a young waitress hurried past carrying a tray of sparkling water. Her pace was careful, but one guest stood abruptly from his chair without looking. The edge of his jacket brushed the tray. A glass tipped. Water splashed across the polished floor. The room fell into that brief, uncomfortable silence that follows a mistake. The waitress froze. Her cheeks flushed red. "I am so sorry," she said quickly, reaching for napkins. The guest sighed dramatically and looked down at his damp sleeve as though it were a personal insult. Several nearby diners turned to watch. Victoria noticed the tension immediately. She had seen scenes like this before. Someone embarrassed. Someone blamed. Someone wishing they could disappear. Before anyone else moved, Lucas stepped forward. He picked up a stack of linen napkins from a nearby service station and knelt beside the spill. "Accidents happen," he said gently. The waitress looked startled. "Sir, I can take care of it." Lucas offered a reassuring smile. "I know you can." His voice remained calm. "But you should not have to do it alone." The guest opened his mouth as if preparing another complaint, but something about Lucas's steady presence seemed to stop him. There was no confrontation, no lecture, just quiet dignity. Within seconds the spill was contained. The waitress exhaled with visible relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Lucas nodded once. "Long day." Her eyes widened. "How could you tell?" "Because you are still smiling even though you are exhausted." The young woman laughed softly. "That obvious?" "Only to people who have been there." Victoria watched the exchange carefully. There was nothing calculated about it. Lucas was not trying to impress anyone. In fact, he seemed completely unaware that anyone was paying attention at all. He returned the unused napkins, thanked another staff member for helping, and calmly resumed his place near the window. The entire moment lasted less than 2 minutes. Yet somehow it lingered. Victoria found herself staring at him again. In her world, people often displayed kindness when there was something to gain. Recognition, influence, advantage. Lucas expected none of those things. He simply saw a person having a difficult moment and stepped in. The piano melody drifted through the restaurant once more. Soft, reflective, almost wistful. Victoria lowered her gaze briefly before looking back toward him. "You do that often?" she asked. Lucas tilted his head. "Do what?" "Help strangers." He seemed genuinely confused by the question. "I guess I never thought about it." Victoria smiled despite herself. "Most people think about it." Lucas glanced toward the waitress, who was now laughing with a coworker. "Most people are carrying something heavy," he said quietly. "Sometimes a little kindness makes the load easier." The words settled between them. Simple words. Ordinary words. Yet they carried a truth that felt strangely rare. Victoria looked around the elegant dining room. Expensive watches, designer suits, important conversations. But somehow the most valuable thing she had witnessed all evening was a man helping someone clean a spilled glass of water. And for the first time in a very long time, she found herself wondering if success and significance were not the same thing at all. Victoria sipped her water slowly, watching Lucas from across the room as he adjusted the chair for a young boy who had just arrived at a nearby table with his mother. Lucas did so with effortless patience, his movements calm and unassuming, yet precise, as though he had been performing small acts of guidance and care for a lifetime. The boy looked at him with wide, trusting eyes, and Lucas knelt briefly to explain which seat would keep him dry from the drizzle still lingering against the tall windows. Victoria could not help but notice the ease with which Lucas handled the interaction, never speaking down, never seeking attention, just quietly ensuring the moment went smoothly for someone else. She shifted in her seat, allowing her curiosity to surface. "Do you often take care of people without them asking?" she asked, her voice barely above the background murmur of the piano and clinking silverware. Lucas's head tilted slightly, gray eyes thoughtful. "I suppose I just notice what needs to be done. Someone should do it." There was no pride in his tone, only the kind of quiet responsibility that carried weight without showing it. Victoria found herself leaning forward, drawn not by fascination alone, but by a growing sense of respect, a recognition that the world rarely witnessed someone act with such unassuming grace. Across the restaurant, soft laughter floated from another table, but it felt distant, as if Lucas's calm had created a bubble around them. She noted how every detail of his demeanor, from the careful placement of his hands on the chair to the attentive glance toward the boy's mother, conveyed a consideration that few ever bothered to notice or emulate. The piano changed keys, a gentle progression that made the polished walls seem warmer, more inviting, and Victoria realized the rhythm of the room had subtly shifted, guided by the presence of Lucas's steady attention. He did not speak again immediately. He simply observed, ensuring the child was comfortable, then returned to his place beside the table near the window. Victoria found herself reflecting on the rarity of such people, those who acted with integrity and kindness without the need for recognition. She realized she had been unconsciously holding her breath, captivated by the simple clarity of his character. Outside, the city lights blurred in the mist, street lamps glowing softly through the drizzle. But inside, the warmth from the chandelier and the quiet hum of the piano underscored a sense of anticipation she could not name. Victoria's fingers drummed lightly against her glass as she processed the impression Lucas had made on her. There was no rush, no sudden declarations, only the careful, deliberate unfolding of a man who led by example, whose actions whispered rather than shouted. In that moment, she understood why so many overlooked the most significant people in their lives. They often did not seek to be seen. Lucas, unaware of her attention, moved to straighten a napkin on the table, the subtle motion filled with respect, efficiency, and humility. Victoria exhaled quietly, the tension she had carried moments before giving way to a steady intrigue, a desire to understand the man whose quiet presence had made the room feel different, as if patience and grace alone could reshape perception, turning a simple dinner into a moment of silent revelation. The soft clinking of silverware and gentle hum of conversation provided a backdrop as Lucas carefully folded the napkin he had straightened moments earlier, placing it neatly beside his water glass. Victoria watched him, her curiosity growing with each subtle action, each demonstration of calm precision that seemed almost effortless. Outside, the mist softened the sharp edges of the city skyline, the lights casting diffused reflections across the rain-specked windows, blending into the warm glow of the dining room. Lucas turned slightly, glancing at a couple nearby who were struggling to manage a wobbly chair and a tray of dishes. He did not hesitate. Quietly, without drawing attention to himself, he moved toward them and steadied the chair, his hand brushing the edge just enough to balance it. He offered a small nod and returned to his place by the window, leaving behind a subtle ripple of gratitude in the air. Victoria felt a rising sense of admiration, noting the effortless manner in which he managed small situations without seeking credit or recognition. Every glance, every movement, seemed measured, respectful, and intentional, reflecting a discipline that went beyond etiquette into something deeper, more intrinsic. She found herself imagining the countless small acts of kindness and consideration he must have performed in his daily life, the invisible gestures that shaped a world around him without fanfare or expectation. The piano shifted to a softer, more introspective melody, and Victoria sensed the rhythm of the evening aligning with the quiet rhythm of Lucas's presence. He did not speak, yet each motion conveyed patience and attentiveness, the type that commands notice even without words. The waitstaff moved past, carrying trays of food, their polished steps echoing faintly, and Lucas acknowledged each with a subtle nod, a momentary recognition that was understated yet sincere. Victoria felt the weight of her own preconceptions dissolving. She had entered the evening expecting the usual display of status and attention, and instead, she was witnessing integrity embodied in a man who operated outside the expectations of recognition and hierarchy. Her heart beat a little faster, not from tension, but from the compelling clarity of his character, the kind that quietly reshapes one's understanding of strength and virtue. Lucas reached for the menu briefly, setting it down with precise care, the movement simple but deliberate, signaling an awareness of the environment and the people around him that was almost palpable. Victoria could not take her eyes off him, aware that the lesson unfolding before her had little to do with conversation and everything to do with presence, quiet grace, and dignity. Outside, the rain began to soften further, a gentle cadence that mirrored the subtle shifts occurring within the room, a calm settling over the space where quiet acts of respect and awareness transcended words. Victoria realized that the room itself had grown still, not in discomfort, but in recognition of a rare, unspoken authenticity, and she felt a strange, compelling urge to remain present, to observe and understand the man whose understated actions were quietly transforming the atmosphere, and, perhaps, her own perspective on the value of quiet strength and deliberate kindness. The evening shadows lengthened across the dining room as Lucas set his glass gently on the table, the faint reflection of the chandelier glinting off the rim. Victoria observed him, noticing the deliberate calm in his movements, the way his hands rested lightly on the table, relaxed yet purposeful. Outside, the mist had thickened, blurring the city lights into shimmering streaks that mirrored the quiet focus in Lucas's gray eyes. A server approached with a delicate dessert tray, carrying an assortment of small pastries and a bowl of fresh fruit. Lucas accepted the plate with a soft nod, his attention still on the patrons nearby, observing without intruding. He offered a subtle smile to a child who reached for a piece of chocolate, guiding the child's hand gently without a word, and then stepped back, allowing the small moment of courtesy to pass unnoticed by most, but not by Victoria. She felt a profound sense of admiration, sensing the consistency in Lucas's character, the integrity that did not seek recognition, only action for the sake of doing right. The piano shifted to a slower, more contemplative melody, echoing softly in the space between them. Victoria's attention wavered toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, where raindrops traced intricate paths down the glass. Lucas's calm presence contrasted sharply with the bustling energy around them, yet he moved as if attuned to the subtleties of the room, aware of the rhythms of others without interference or show. When a tray tilted slightly on the sideboard, threatening to spill, Lucas reached out, instinctively to steady it, his actions fluid and unobtrusive. The guests nearby barely noticed, but Victoria felt the weight of the gesture, a testament to careful attention and quiet dignity. She found herself thinking of the countless small acts of integrity that must fill his life, unseen, unremarked upon, yet shaping a world of subtle respect around him. He returned to his place, straightening his jacket, a movement so simple, so measured, that it seemed to convey more about his character than any words could. Victoria's curiosity deepened, tinged with the realization that she had been evaluating people her entire life through titles, appearances, and status. Yet this man commanded attention without any of those things. The soft glow of the chandelier flickered in reflection across the polished table, and she noticed the smallest details, the way his sleeves were rolled, the careful placement of his glass, the serene posture he maintained despite the minor disruptions of the evening. Outside, a distant horn sounded faintly in the city streets, but inside, the room seemed suspended in the quiet magnetism of Lucas's presence. Victoria realized that her assumptions were shifting, admiration mingled with intrigue, and she recognized that moments like these, subtle yet profound, revealed more about a person than a lifetime of titles and accolades. Lucas's calm, steady gaze lifted toward her briefly, a quiet acknowledgement, and she found herself holding her own breath, sensing that this silent exchange carried more weight than 1,000 spoken words. The piano notes faded into a gentle cadence, and in that pause, the room seemed to recognize the gravity of quiet strength, of integrity manifested in deliberate, understated action, leaving Victoria aware that what she witnessed was rare, transformative, and entirely unassuming. Victoria finally looked down at her phone for the first time in nearly an hour. The screen was crowded with unread messages, calendar alerts, and updates from executives waiting for her decisions. Normally, she would have answered every notification within minutes. Tonight, she had forgotten they existed. The realization startled her. She locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the table. Across from her, Lucas stood near the window, watching the rain ease into a light drizzle. The city beyond the glass seemed calmer now, the traffic moving in long streams of white and red lights beneath the evening sky. A server approached Victoria with a hesitant expression. "Excuse me, ma'am. There is someone here asking for you." Victoria nodded automatically. "Send them over." Moments later, a sharply dressed man entered the dining area carrying a leather portfolio. He stopped when he saw Lucas standing nearby. His eyes narrowed briefly before returning to Victoria. "I have the contract documents you requested." Victoria glanced at the portfolio and then at Lucas. Something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, the contract felt unimportant. "Leave them with the hostess," she said. The man blinked. "Tonight?" "Yes. But the board meeting is tomorrow morning." Victoria smiled politely. "Then I will review them tomorrow morning." The man hesitated before nodding and walking away. Lucas had witnessed the entire exchange without comment. He simply returned his attention to the rain outside. Victoria laughed softly. "You know, most people would be impressed by that." Lucas looked toward her. "By what?" "The fact that I just postponed a business decision worth millions of dollars." Lucas considered the statement for a moment. "Will the decision still be there tomorrow?" "Probably." "Then maybe it was not the most important thing tonight." Victoria stared at him. The answer was simple. Obvious, even. Yet somehow it carried more wisdom than many conversations she had heard inside corporate boardrooms. A comfortable silence followed. The piano player began a gentle new melody near the center of the restaurant. The notes drifted through the room like warm light. Nearby conversations softened. Even the waitstaff seemed less hurried. Lucas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Victoria noticed the careful way he handled it. "What is that?" she asked. A smile touched the corner of his mouth. "A list. A list. My daughter's birthday plans." Victoria laughed. "You need a written list?" "Trust me, an 8-year-old can create a surprisingly detailed schedule." He unfolded the page. Handwritten notes covered both sides. Telescope, chocolate cake, stargazing blanket, hot cocoa, extra marshmallows. Victoria smiled as she read. The handwriting clearly belonged to a child. Small stars and smiling moons filled the margins. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Victoria noticed something written at the bottom. Her expression softened. "Make sure Dad remembers to have fun too." Lucas glanced down at the note and shook his head with a quiet smile. She added that part herself. Victoria looked away briefly, unexpectedly emotional. The room suddenly felt different. Smaller, warmer, more real. She had spent years surrounded by people who pursued bigger offices, larger deals, and endless achievements. Yet a handwritten reminder from a little girl somehow carried more meaning than any executive report she had read all year. Outside, the clouds began to break. A faint glow from the moon appeared above the city skyline. Lucas folded the paper carefully and slipped it back into his pocket. Victoria watched him, finally understanding something she had missed all evening. The mistake that had brought them together had already been corrected in her mind long ago. She knew exactly who he was not. What surprised her was how much she wanted to discover who he truly was. The restaurant had grown quieter as the evening stretched toward its final hour. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the city washed clean beneath a sky slowly revealing scattered stars above the skyline. Soft piano notes lingered in the air like a memory unwilling to leave. Victoria stood from her chair and walked toward the window. For a moment, neither she nor Lucas spoke. They simply looked out at the city below, where headlights flowed through the streets like rivers of light. It was Lucas who finally broke the silence. "Looks like the weather cleared." Victoria smiled faintly. "My schedule did too." Lucas chuckled softly. The sound surprised her. It was warm, genuine, and rare. "Your assistant is probably worried. My entire executive team is probably worried." Lucas nodded as if that made perfect sense. "Then tomorrow should be interesting." Victoria laughed again. The laughter felt lighter than it had in years. She realized she could not remember the last evening she had spent without checking quarterly reports, reviewing presentations, or preparing for another meeting. Yet somehow this unexpected night had given her something far more valuable than productivity. It had given her perspective. A server approached with the check, uncertain where to place it. Victoria reached for it immediately. Lucas reached at the same time. Both stopped. The server awkwardly froze. Lucas smiled and pulled his hand back first. "Go ahead." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "You surrendered too easily." My daughter says picking the right battles is a superpower. Victoria shook her head, amused. She sounds wise. She keeps me humble. The server finally left, relieved. Another comfortable silence settled between them. It was no longer the silence of strangers. It was the silence of two people who had discovered something unexpected in one another. Victoria glanced toward the small gift bag resting beside Lucas. You should get home. Lucas looked at the bag and nodded. She is probably looking out the window waiting for me. The image settled gently into Victoria's heart. A little girl waiting for her father. A telescope. Hot cocoa. Marshmallows. A night beneath the stars. Simple things. Important things. Lucas picked up the gift bag and adjusted his jacket. For the first time all evening, it felt as though the moment might actually end. Victoria surprised herself by feeling disappointed. Lucas noticed the expression. What? He asked softly. Victoria hesitated. For years, she had mastered negotiations, presentations, and difficult conversations. Yet this simple truth felt strangely difficult to say. I am glad the mistake happened. Lucas studied her for a moment. The corners of his mouth lifted into a quiet smile. Me too. The words hung gently between them. No grand declaration. No dramatic promise. Just honesty. The kind that carried weight because it asked for nothing in return. Outside, the clouds continued to drift apart, revealing more stars overhead. Lucas glanced upward through the glass. Looks like good telescope weather. Victoria followed his gaze. Your daughter will be happy. That is the goal. She nodded slowly. You know, I spend most of my life chasing bigger things. Lucas looked toward her. And tonight? Victoria smiled. The answer came easily. Tonight reminded me that bigger is not always better. Lucas held her gaze for a quiet moment. Neither looked away. Neither rushed to fill the silence. The city continued moving below them. The piano played its final notes. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed across the night. And in that calm, unhurried moment, two people from completely different worlds stood side by side, connected not by status, wealth, or expectation, but by something far rarer. Respect, grace, and the simple realization that sometimes the most important people enter our lives by accident, then stay in our hearts because of who they truly are. Neither walked away. Not from the memory of the evening. Not from the lesson it carried. And perhaps, without fully realizing it yet, not from each other.